No phone, no fire, no food, just you, barefoot in the middle of a freezing forest. It's getting dark. You're hungry, exhausted, and something is moving in the bushes. You wouldn't last 10 minutes in a caveman's world. And here's why this hook drops viewers into a terrifying and unfamiliar situation, tapping into their fear of discomfort, danger, and the unknown, making them stay to find out how early humans survived. What modern humans can't even imagine. Chapter 1. Welcome to the Stone Age. Part 1. Drop into a brutal world. Imagine waking up in a world with no roads, no buildings, no people, just raw nature stretching endlessly in every direction. The wind howls through the trees like a warning, and the only thing you're wearing is a strip of animal hide that barely keeps you warm. There's no breakfast waiting, no bed to go back to, no notifications pinging your phone, because that phone doesn't exist. In fact, nothing you depend on does. Welcome to the Stone Age, a time when survival wasn't a lifestyle trend, it was your full-time job. Every second of every day was a test. Against the elements, against starvation, against the beasts that lurked just beyond sight. Now pause for a second and ask yourself, could you actually survive here? Our ancestors didn't have a choice. Homo sapiens, roughly 300,000 years ago, shared the planet with other hominin species, like the stocky, cold-adapted Neanderthals in Europe or the mysterious Denisovans in Asia. But regardless of who or where they were, one thing remained the same. Nature didn't care who you were. It would kill you without hesitation. You had to be in tune with your environment, because ignorance could cost your life. You needed to know which berries were safe and which would make your stomach twist until you died. You needed to understand animal tracks. Was that a deer you could eat, or a predator hunting you? And forget about being alone. In the Stone Age, being alone was practically a death sentence. You needed a group, a tribe, to watch your back while you slept, to help gather food, to share the burden of survival. There was no individual glory here, there was only alive or not. But before we get into the dangers of predators and primitive tools, we need to understand how people lived and how much more they endured than most of us could imagine. Because this wasn't just a harsher version of camping, this was a daily, grinding, terrifying reality, where every resource you take for granted today had to be earned through blood, sweat, and sometimes loss. Chapter 1. Welcome to the Stone Age. Part 2. What they ate. War and fourrageur, probably. Wondering, what did these people even eat? The answer, anything they could get their hands on. And it wasn't pretty. Forget grocery stores or stocked pantries. Every calorie was earned through sweat and danger. Hunting wasn't done with rifles or even bows. No, imagine throwing a sharpened rock on a stick at a moving animal the size of a small car. That was the standard weapon. A handcrafted wooden spear with a stone tip, maybe fire-hardened if you had the time. And food wasn't guaranteed. One day might bring a feast. The tribe brings down a reindeer or wild boar. But the next 5 days, roots, insects, maybe nothing. Starvation was always just around the corner, gnawing at your ribs. Some tribes even scavenged meat from animal kills they found, stealing from predators, and risking their lives just to get scraps. Clothing wasn't fashion. It was survival. Animal hides weren't tanned or tailored in the way we think of clothes today. They were stiff, heavy, and rough. Tied together with sinew or plant fiber, they barely kept the cold out. Wet hides froze stiff. If you didn't dry them fast, you might sleep in something colder than ice itself. And fear, it was constant. There were no walls, no lights. When night came, the dark swallowed everything. You couldn't see 2 feet in front of you, and every snap of a twig could mean death. Predators weren't just a problem, they were a threat multiplier. Cave lions, hyenas, wolves, bears, bigger, stronger, faster than anything you've seen in a zoo. And you were on their menu. Even drinking water was a gamble. Rivers and streams weren't treated. One sip of the wrong bacteria, and you could die from dehydration faster than you'd die of thirst. To survive here wasn't about strength, it was about knowledge. And the cost of learning was often someone's life. This was the world that shaped us. A world that demanded everything, rewarded nothing, and punished mistakes without mercy. Chapter 1. Welcome to the Stone Age, Part 3. You wouldn't last a day. But they did imagine waking up with the sunrise because the cold pressed into your bones so hard, sleep became impossible. You've got no food in your belly, your breath fogs in the air, and your feet are already numb. But there's no room for rest. You need to move, find water, find food, build fire, or die. Now think about this. Our ancestors did this every single day. They didn't have instructions, YouTube tutorials, or survival guides. Everything they knew was passed down through stories, demonstration, and trial by. They learned by doing, by watching others fail, by not dying when it counted, and they didn't just survive, they adapted. When ice covered the earth in thick sheets during the Ice Age, they changed. When mammoths disappeared and prey shifted, they found new ways to hunt. When fire was discovered and controlled, it changed everything. It gave them warmth, light, protection, and cooked food, which gave more energy and fewer diseases. But let's be honest, you dropped into this world. No GPS, no phone, no fridge, no modern medicine. You wouldn't last 10 minutes, not because you're weak, but because you're not trained. You've never had to feel your way through pitch-black forests to escape predators. You've never had to make fire with 2 sticks and do it fast before the cold kills you. You've never had to look at your friend and decide who's going to stay awake tonight to keep the wolves away. The Stone Age didn't care about comfort, it cared about survival. And somehow, against all odds, they made it. They laid the foundation for everything we have today. Every invention, every city, every civilization was built on their back-breaking fight to survive. And now, as we move forward, let's dive into the next chapter, where things get even more dangerous. Chapter 2. Eat or be eaten. Part 1. Welcome to the food chain, and you're not on top, it's easy to forget. Sitting behind screens and locked doors, that humans were once prey. Not just potential prey, active prey. And in the prehistoric world, we weren't even close to the top of the food chain. Imagine this. You're out with your small hunting group, tracking a herd of wild deer. You're hungry, exhausted, and the cold bites through your skin. Suddenly, the air shifts. The birds stop singing. Something's watching. Then you see it, a flash of fur, a glint of teeth, a cave lion, bigger than any modern lion, stronger, smarter, and you've got a sharp stick. This wasn't a video game. There were no do-overs. If that lion charged, you had seconds to either defend yourself or die horribly. And most of the time, even fighting back meant someone didn't make it home. Humans were soft targets. No claws, no sharp teeth. Not very fast, not particularly strong. So, how did we survive? By becoming clever. We learned to work together. To throw spears from a distance. To trap animals instead of wrestling them. To scare off predators using fire and numbers. But make no mistake, we still died. Often, large predators were everywhere. Saber cats with 6-inch fangs. Packs of dire wolves with bone-crushing jaws. Giant bears that could chase a man up a tree and wait at the bottom. Even crocodiles in rivers could end a life in seconds. It wasn't just land animals either. Snakes, insects, parasites. Nature was a minefield of deadly creatures. Each one better adapted, faster, and more equipped to kill than a two-legged ape with a stick. To hunt meant risking your life. But not hunting meant starving. It was a choice between danger and death. Modern humans, we order takeout. Back then, you took your life in your hands just to eat a piece of meat. Chapter 2, Eat or Be Eaten. Part 2, Stone Tools, Bloody Hands, and the hunt that never ends. Hunting in the Stone Age wasn't a weekend activity or a sport. It was a fight for life, and losing meant death. There were no safety nets, no backup, meals, no margin for error. Every kill meant a temporary reprieve from starvation. Every failure meant the tribe went to bed hungrier, weaker, and closer to dying out. So how did they do it? They used stone tools, primitive, yes, but deadly in the right hands. Flint, obsidian, and chert were shaped into blades sharp enough to cut through hide and muscle. Spears were fashioned with painstaking care, fire-hardened, and sometimes tipped with bone or sharpened stone. These tools weren't just weapons, they were survival. But tools alone didn't guarantee a successful hunt. Strategy mattered more. Early humans learned to track, to follow the faintest signs: a bent twig, a patch of disturbed soil, a warm pile of droppings. They learned animal behavior like it was second nature. When deer moved, how bison reacted; when cornered, where boar liked to sleep. This wasn't casual knowledge. It was life-saving intelligence, earned over years of observation and shared through generations. That then came the kill, brutal, loud, fast. Imagine dozens of hunters surrounding a panicked animal, shouting to confuse it, throwing rocks and spears. Blood sprays, hooves flail, someone gets kicked, someone else is nearly gored. The kill is messy and dangerous. But when it's done, if it's done, the celebration begins. The entire tribe comes to feast. Bones are cracked open for marrow. Every part of the animal is used: meat for food, hide for clothing, bones for tools, tendons for rope. Nothing goes to waste. Because they didn't know when or if the next hunt would succeed. But the celebration is short. Because in the back of everyone's mind is one haunting truth: tomorrow we hunt again, or we die. In the Stone Age, rest wasn't a reward, it was a liability. Chapter 2, Eat or Be Eaten. Part 3. When you become the prey of just finished eating, the tribe is full. Fires crackle in the cold evening air, and for the first time in days, your stomach isn't hollow. But peace in the Stone Age, it never lasts, because, in the distance, a low growl, not from your people, from the shadows. Predators smelled blood. They watched from tree lines, stalked behind rocks, waited for night. Hyenas, wolves, even giant lions. These weren't cowardly scavengers. They were calculating hunters, and now that you're fed, you smell like dinner. The same instincts you used to hunt, they used against you. Prehistoric predators didn't just rely on strength, they were strategic. They learned human patterns, knew when you were most vulnerable. Sometimes they'd attack during a hunt. Other times they'd creep into camp in the dead of night, dragging a child, an elder, even a full-grown adult, away before anyone could react. You weren't always the hunter. In fact, many nights you were the hunted. Tribes built fires not just for warmth, but as a desperate shield against the dark. They arranged sleeping positions in circles, with warriors on the outside, and, even then, people disappeared. Bones found miles from camp. Drag marks in the dirt, the silent terror of nature reclaiming what it could, and the fear, it was constant. Unlike today, fear wasn't irrational, it was survival. Fear kept you alert. Fear kept you alive. Let your guard down, and you were gone. It was that simple. Wasn't a world designed for safety. It was a world of risk, of death, of endless pressure to stay one step ahead, because the moment you slipped, you became part of the cycle. You became the prey. Chapter 3, Fire, Shelter and Freezing to Death, Part 1. The cold kills faster than lions. Predators may stalk you. Hunger may weaken you, but nothing in the Stone Age was deadlier than the cold. It didn't roar like a lion or lunge like a wolf. It crept in slowly, numbing your fingers, stiffening your legs, fogging your thoughts. And by the time you realized it, it was too late. In much of the prehistoric world, Ice Age conditions reigned. We're talking temperatures dropping well below freezing at night, winds that sliced through animal hide like knives, and snow that buried entire landscapes. For modern people, that's camping trip cancelled. For cavemen, that was Tuesday. Shelter wasn't optional. It was the thin line between life and death. But building shelter wasn't easy. There were no tents, no tools from Home Depot, no instruction manual. You had to find what nature gave you: caves, fallen trees, cliffside overhangs, and then make it work. If you didn't find shelter before nightfall, your chances of surviving till morning dropped fast. Hypothermia could set in within hours. Frostbite even faster. And it wasn't just uncomfortable, it was agonizing. Limbs stiffened, breathing slowed, and your brain would trick you, whispering that you were warm right before it shut down. This is where fire entered the scene, not as a luxury, but as a lifeline. But fire was hard. Making it from scratch, without matches or lighters. It was an art, a skill passed down like sacred knowledge. Rubbing sticks together wasn't just a survival cliché. It was reality. Sparks were coaxed into flames with dried moss, grass, and patience. One mistake, one damp stick, and your whole night could end in death. And if you were lucky enough to get a fire going, you guarded it with your life. Literally. Because without fire, you didn't last long. Chapter 3. Fire, Shelter, and Freezing to Death, Part 2. Building shelter with bare hands and broken tools. Imagine trying to build a home with no tools, no blueprint, and no second chances. That was daily life in the Stone Age. Shelter wasn't built for comfort, it was built for survival. The materials were whatever nature offered: fallen branches, animal bones, stone slabs, and dry grasses. Every shelter had to be quick to build, strong enough to block wind, and hidden from predators. Most importantly, it had to trap what little warmth you could generate, whether from fire or body heat. Sometimes, the tribe would huddle inside caves. Sound safe, right? But caves weren't cozy dens. They were cold, damp, and often already occupied by bears or other dangerous animals. Clearing one out wasn't easy. It took teamwork, fire, shouting, and sometimes blood. When caves weren't available, early humans got creative. They dug into hillsides, built dome-like huts using mammoth bones and animal skins, or constructed lean-tos against large trees. And remember, all of this was done with nothing but stone tools, calloused hands, and sheer willpower. There were no nails, no rope, no nails. Joints were tied using sinew from animals or braided vines. Roofs were weighed down with rocks to survive wind. Every stick placed had to matter. And it wasn't just about warmth. Shelter had to be safe from everything: rain, snow, predators, insects, and even other humans. A poorly built shelter could flood overnight, collapse under snowfall, or trap smoke from the fire, suffocating those inside. Worst of all, you often had to move. Nomadic life meant shelters were temporary. You'd build one, sleep in it for days or weeks, and then tear it down, leaving behind only footprints and ashdot. This was shelter, caveman style, fragile, temporary, but life-saving. And without it, you wouldn't see the sunrise. Chapter 3. Fire, Shelter, and Freezing to Death. Part 3. Mastering Fire. The most dangerous gift, fire, was the turning point. It was the most powerful tool a caveman could wield, and the most dangerous, because while fire meant survival, failing to control it could mean disaster for the entire tribe. First came the spark. Literally, early humans used flint striking against iron pyrite to create sparks, or friction methods like bow drills and hand drills. But that was only the beginning. They had to catch that spark on dry tinder, moss, bark shavings, dried grass, then blow gently, carefully, hoping the ember would grow. It could take hours, and one wrong move could blow out everything. But once the fire caught, the warmth, the light, the power it brought was unmatched. It changed the rules. Fire kept the cold at bay. It turned meat from dangerous raw protein into something safer, tastier, and easier to digest. It lit up the night, pushing back the predators that once ruled the darkness. It allowed humans to sit together, to talk, to plan, to be a tribe in ways they never could before. It even changed their bodies, literally. Cooking helped our ancestors absorb more nutrients, which led to smaller guts and bigger brains over generations. It gave them an edge no other species had. But fire was also a beast. One mistake, and a gust of wind could burn down an entire forest camp. Fire could scar, kill, or blind. A stray spark could ignite your shelter, trapping people inside. And keeping fire alive wasn't easy. Rain, wind, wet wood, all could smother it in minutes. So they guarded fire like a newborn child. Even while sleeping, someone stayed up to feed it. Ashes were buried to preserve embers, carried wrapped in leaves when the tribe moved. Fire became sacred, a living, breathing thing they protected and feared at the same time. It was the Stone Age's most vital gift, and its greatest risk. Chapter 4. The Tribe, the Threat, the Trust. Part 1. Trust or die. Inside the tribe. In the Stone Age, you didn't survive alone. Ever. Forget everything you've seen in survival shows, where one guy with a knife lasts in the wild for a week. That wasn't real life for early humans. In their world, isolation wasn't bravery, it was a death sentence. You needed your tribe, like you needed food and fire. Without them, you were exposed to predators, starvation, freezing temperatures, and loneliness that could break your mind. The tribe was your shield, your home, your entire world. But being in a tribe wasn't easy. It wasn't a perfect community of equals. It was a delicate system, built on trust, fear, and necessity. Each member had a role, and every role was vital. Hunters risked their lives for meat. Gatherers searched for safe plants, roots, and water. Elders passed down knowledge. Children were trained, tested, and protected because they were the future. And if you didn't pull your weight, you became a liability. There were no second chances. A weak hunter slowed the group. A thief could steal precious resources. Someone who endangered the fire or led predators to camp. They didn't get forgiven. They got left behind. Disagreements happened over food, shelter, mates, leadership, and without rules or written laws, punishment was swift and final. You could be exiled over one mistake. And in the wilderness, exile almost always meant death. But the tribe wasn't just brutal. It was also the foundation of human connection. Around the fire, stories were told. Plans were made. Bonds were formed. The tribe became a second skin, a place of safety in a world full of danger. Because when you were part of a tribe, you had more than just numbers. You had purpose. You had protection. You had people who watched your back while you slept. And in the Stone Age, that meant everything. Chapter 4. The Tribe. The Threat. The Trust Part 2. The Outsider Dilemma, Friend, Threat, or Dead Weight. You're out hunting when a figure appears on the horizon, not a predator, not someone from your tribe, a stranger, alone. In today's world, you might wave or offer help, but in the Stone Age, you freeze. Your heart races, your hand grips your spear. Because, in a world with so little to go around, an outsider wasn't just a question mark. They were a potential threat to your food, your fire, your family. And your tribe had to decide, accept them, test them, or eliminate them. The idea of welcoming someone in was rare and dangerous. Outsiders could carry diseases. They could steal, betray, even kill. Trust took time, and time wasn't something anyone had the luxury to waste. Every new mouth to feed meant one more risk to everyone else. So, the first instinct. Suspicion, maybe even hostility. But not every outsider was an enemy. Sometimes, they were survivors, skilled hunters, gatherers, or firemakers. People who had lost their own tribe. If they could prove themselves useful, tribes might cautiously accept them. Not with open arms, but with wary eyes. There were tests, sometimes spoken, often silent. Would they share their food? Did they pull their weight during hunts? Could they start a fire on their own? How did they react to authority? Every movement was judged. Every choice analyzed. One mistake, one sign of selfishness, and it could be over. Some were tested in more brutal ways, intentionally given the hardest tasks. The worst food, or no sleep, just to see if they broke. Because if you couldn't survive the trial, you couldn't survive the tribe. And if you failed, you were cast out. No confrontation, just left behind when the tribe moved on. No goodbye, no second chance. In the Stone Age, survival didn't have room for mercy. Chapter 4. The Tribe. The Threat. The Trust. Part 3. When trust breaks, betrayal, conflict, and collapse. And collapse in the Stone Age. Trust wasn't a luxury. It was the glue holding your fragile world together. But when that trust shattered, the consequences were swift and brutal. There were no courts, no time for lengthy debates or second chances. If someone betrayed the tribe, whether by stealing food, withholding fire, lying during a hunt, or endangering the group's location, the result wasn't punishment. It was removal. Sometimes that meant exile, other times, something far more final. Imagine a hunter secretly hiding meat from a successful kill. The others are starving. Children are crying. And yet, he eats alone in the dark. When the tribe finds out, there's no discussion, just hard stares and silence. The next morning, he's gone. Maybe he left. Maybe he didn't. But the message is clear. Betray the group, and the group cuts you off. Even small betrayals could spiral. One broken promise could unravel a fragile alliance. One reckless decision, like lighting a fire in the open and alerting predators, could mean death for everyone. And when conflict broke out, it wasn't just words. It was weapons, fists, stone blades, chaos. Sometimes tribes split entirely. A disagreement over food or leadership could divide families, splitting the group into two weakened halves. And, in the wild, division meant vulnerability. Many splinter groups didn't survive long after. But betrayal didn't always come from within. Sometimes, trust was broken between tribes. A temporary alliance for a big hunt, an agreement to share water, and then one side turned, took more, attacked at night, stole children, supplies, or tools. That's when tribes learned the hard truth. Not every enemy wore fangs. Some smiled, some sat beside you by the fire. In the end, trust was everything, and once it was broken, there were no survivors. Only stories. Chapter 5. Brain versus Brawn. How we eventually won. Part 1. Outsmarting nature. The rise of human intelligence. For thousands of years, humans were just another fragile species, clawing for survival. We weren't the fastest. We weren't the strongest. We didn't have claws, armor, venom, or wings. Nature had the upper hand. But slowly, and then suddenly, the game changed. We stopped reacting to nature and started outsmarting it. It began with tools, not just sharpened rocks, but specialized tools: scrapers, awls, bone needles, fish hooks. We weren't just smashing things anymore. We were crafting, innovating, learning that different tasks needed different tools. Then came planning. Real planning, not instinct-driven behavior like wolves or lions, but the ability to imagine what might happen, to prepare for winter while it was still summer, to store food, to map hunting paths in the mind, to pass that knowledge to others without seeing it firsthand. And that's where the biggest leap happened. Language. Other animals could communicate, sure. But humans, we started telling stories, teaching lessons, warning about danger that happened days ago in a place miles away. Suddenly, knowledge could leap across generations, outlasting death itself. Our brains became weapons. We developed traps to catch animals while we slept. We used fire strategically to clear brush, herd animals, and cook food that was previously inedible. We painted on cave walls, not just to decorate, but to remember, record, and teach. We built rituals, shared myths, created meaning beyond survival. And with that came something no predator had: culture. Nature couldn't evolve fast enough to keep up. We didn't grow sharper claws, we invented spears. We didn't develop fur, we sewed clothes. We didn't need night vision, we controlled fire. On the battle of brain versus brawn, humans took the riskier path, the slower one. But we bet everything on our minds. And eventually, we won. Chapter 5. Brain versus Brawn. How we eventually won. Part 2. The hidden power of stories, firelight, and memory. It's night again. The fire crackles, the hunt is over, the cold pushed back for now. And that's when something incredible happens. The tribe begins to speak, not in grunts or warnings, but in stories. A tale about the great hunt, a warning about the river where someone vanished, a memory of the one who didn't make it back. This, not the spear, not the fire, was humanity's secret weapon. The ability to remember and to share those memories in stories. Stories turned survival into strategy. Instead of every generation learning from scratch, they could inherit wisdom. A child could know which berry kills without ever tasting it. A young hunter could learn how to trap a mammoth without ever having seen one. This wasn't just communication, this was time travel for knowledge. The fire became the center of this magic. It brought people close. It kept the predators back. But more importantly, it gave us space to think, to reflect, to remember who we'd lost, to imagine who we could become. And with stories came identity. People no longer just survived. They belonged. They had ancestors, heroes, lessons. They became more than individuals. They became a people. Language evolved. Symbols scratched on bone turned into patterns. Patterns became marks. Marks became meaning. It would take thousands of years, but the seeds of writing were already in the dirt. Memory, once locked inside one mind, now passed through generations like a sacred torch. The tribe's past became its strength, its compass, its soul. predators, had fangs. We had legacy. And legacy doesn't die. Chapter 5. Brain vs. Brawn. How we eventually won. Part 3. From barefoot to civilization. Why you're still Hitake. Look around you. Roads, lights, running water, medicine, music, everything you depend on. It all traces back to people who lived barefoot in the mud, freezing, hungry, and hunted. You are here because they didn't give up. They adapted. They innovated. They passed on knowledge when they could have hoarded it. They protected the tribe, even when it meant risking their lives. They buried their dead with care. They carved bones with meaning. They painted stories in the dark corners of caves, not for survival, but because they felt something. That desire to remember, to express, to create, that's what made them human. That's what makes you human. Their world was unforgiving, merciless, and wild. You wouldn't last 10 minutes in it. But they lasted generations, long enough to give rise to farming, then cities, then nations. Every language spoken today, a descendant of their grunts and firelit stories. Every building, built on their understanding of shelter. Every meal, cooked with the knowledge they unlocked through trial, blood, and sacrifice. You stand on the bones of those who crawled through darkness and cold to give you light. The ease of your life doesn't make you soft, it makes you lucky. And that luck was earned by them. So next time you turn on a light, complain about traffic, or scroll through a feed without thinking, remember, your ancestors were out there, barefoot, in the snow, dodging lions and praying for fire. You wouldn't last 10 minutes in their world, but because they did, you never had to. If this journey gave you a new perspective on our ancestors, their fear, their courage, and their fire, then don't let it end here. Subscribe for more stories that dive into the forgotten roots of who we are. Drop a comment, could you survive the Stone Age for just one day? And share this video so others remember just how far we've come. Until next time, stay curious, stay human.